Hey, space fans, Tariq Malik, editor-in-chief of Space.com here. And have you ever wanted to go to space? Because I know I have, and the person that we're going to speak to in a minute definitely has. Jared Isaacman, CEO and founder of Shift4 Payments. Welcome, and thank you for joining us today.
Oh, happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
And we should point out that you have you've bought a trip to space with SpaceX. I think everyone is a bit envious of that. But not only that, you're bringing three other folks along with you on the Inspiration4 mission. Kind of tell us about this mission. I mean, how did that come about?
Well, so like you, because I'm familiar with your background, and I think a lot of your readers, I'm a space geek and have been for a really long time, and always dreamed about having the opportunity to go up in space. That's why I've kind of pursued my aviation passion for nearly 20 years, which has taken me from world record flights to air shows to I own a defense aerospace company for about 10 years. But the odds of becoming a NASA astronaut, you have a better chance of getting hit by lightning. That's a fact. So always was hoping for a world, where, commercial space exploration was possible, where everyday people could go and journey among the stars. Cause I'm sure we got a lot of, Star Wars and Star Trek fans on this, like who hasn't imagined themselves, cruising around in an X-Wing or something like that. And I do believe that that's a world that we're all going to live in at some point. Might be a little bit down the road. But Inspiration4 is the first step in a direction towards that world. And given that significance, that's why we've intentionally been really thoughtful about the crew selection process and making sure that everyday people could come along in this mission. So you've got a great humanitarian representing our mission spirit of hope, frontline healthcare worker, maybe never grew up and thought of becoming an astronaut, but did think about making a difference in the lives of children who are fighting cancer. You're going to have somebody who's going to represent the mission spirit of generosity, and they're just going to go on the mission website and make a donation, and they're going to get a chance to go to space. And then an opportunity for an entrepreneur to elevate their business to the stars and represent our fourth and final crew member seat. And we're going to try and raise a ton of money for St. Jude Children's Research Hospital along the way.
Well, I should ask you about that. So you just mentioned kind of the pillars. You've got three kind of core pillars: hope, generosity, prosperity. The name is Inspiration4. I think a lot of people, when they think about buying a ticket to space, they think about just buying their ticket to space and what that private kind of flight might be like. But when you were kind of making this decision, where did those pillars come from? Why kind of make it a bit more than just a personal experience for yourself?
Well, first of all, I certainly hope that in the future it can be, a bunch of buddies going up in space together. Like that's what you want. That's the world you want to work towards, where it becomes an everyday thing. But this is the first, right? And as soon as I knew I would have the opportunity to command the first all civilian mission to space, like my mind immediately gravitated towards ways that, this can be, super symbolic of its step in this direction. So that meant, the crew members who are going to represent the mission and hopefully how they'd be able to deliver, an inspiring message to the world, and the organization that we stand to benefit. Because I'm a huge believer that if we are going to make progress up there in space, as we should, then we also have an obligation to tackle some of life's biggest problems here on Earth. And that's where St. Jude Children's Research Hospital comes in. But there was never a question right from the start, like as soon as I knew this was going to be the first, it was going to have an interesting way to involve everyday people in it, and it was going to do an awful lot of good.
Now, I think the first thing I thought when I heard about your flight was why SpaceX and why now? Now, clearly they've SpaceX with Crew Dragon has been launching astronauts for NASA just only for less than a year now. Although clearly they've been working on that program alongside their uncrewed versions for a long time. But other folks have flown on Russian Soyuz spacecraft to the space station, but this will be the first all civilian flight, not only to launch non-professional astronauts, but to launch from the United States as well. So how did this mission come together for you, where it became a possibility? I mean, I saw a note from you where you were like, you've been sitting on this for a couple months, in secret, and now finally you can tell everybody. So I'm just wondering how long was it to kind of put this thing together?
Well, I think that you have a number of really good questions there. This is the first time, an all civilian mission will go to space that wasn't sponsored by a superpower. So even those, who were really fortunate to go up on Soyuz in the past, that was a Russian government mission. This is so special because it is the first time that all civilians are going to be able to go to space. And you're totally correct that coming from, the United States, especially, which we've been lacking our human spaceflight program here for nearly 10 years since the space shuttle retired. But that's where SpaceX comes in, because I truly believe they reinvigorated the world's interest in space. I think they have us all energized as to what is possible. I'm sure, like, you and your, viewers, that when we saw those simultaneous Falcon Heavy first stages land nearly at the same time, it was like, holy, this is game on time, right? So there's no question it was going to be SpaceX. I mean, not to mention it is the only human-rated orbital spacecraft system in the United States right now. But they're leading the pack. They are giving birth to the next great age of exploration.
And in terms of training for yourself, now you mentioned that you have flown in air shows. I was reading it was the you were with the Black Diamond team. Is that correct? For a while. And you're from New Jersey, if that's correct.
That's right. Yep.
A lot of astronauts are from New Jersey. I'm not. Did that ever factor into your interest in space? I live like the next town over is where Buzz Aldrin is from. The Kelly brothers are from my town here. And you mentioned Westfield, New Jersey was when you kind of made that pledge in kindergarten to go to space. I'm just curious, kind of what your first exposure to space might have been.
Well, my first exposure was absolutely in Westfield. It was Wilson Elementary School, kindergarten, in the library, looking at some really high resolution picture books of Space Shuttle. I did tell my kindergarten teacher I would go to space someday, and she said she'd be watching. So that's all very true story. I didn't actually realize until you mentioned it that there is a deep space history of astronauts coming from New Jersey. That's awesome. Yeah. And
well, I guess one of them has walked on the moon with Buzz Aldrin, and you are making history with this flight too. But when I think of astronauts going to space, I know that they have a lot of training. Many of the crews work together for years, and your flight is currently slated to fly the tail end of 2021. I'm curious how you're shaping that training program. How much of it is kind of established with SpaceX's work with NASA, and then what do you hope to do to bring your team together? I think you've got a short amount of time to make a really tight-knit team for your flight.
Yeah, so that's right. I mean, that's why we have to focus very much in this month on getting our crew selection process right, and at the same time, hopefully shattering some fundraising efforts for St. Jude. But we are going to roll in March right into our training program, and it is extensive. It does draw entirely upon the NASA approved curriculum for their crew who go up on Dragon. Now there are differences. Obviously, we're not docking the station, so that cuts out a lot of the training elements that are pretty time consuming. And we're obviously not doing an EVA. There's no spacewalk, which also does shrink down some of the time frames. That still means there's a lot to get done from now until the end of the year. But I do think we'll be ready. And as I've mentioned, I plan to supplement some of the NASA approved curriculum with a couple ideas of my own. I'm a bit of a mountain climber, so I'm going to take the team out into the mountains and get us all super uncomfortable in close quarters in a tent with some hopefully snowy conditions, because I definitely want to make sure we all get along really well under those circumstances here on Earth before we go up in space together.
I guess that the last thing you would want are any surprises when you're locked in a spacecraft for 2 to 4 days. So. Well, tell me about the decision to raise awareness and funds for St. Jude's. I'm curious, is there like a personal connection there? I know that you've flown before on your record-setting flight around the world for Make-A-Wish Foundation. How did this collaboration come up, and why spotlight their research there? You've got, I think, a cancer survivor and healthcare worker flying on your your flight. Is that correct?
That's right. So our crew member who represents Hope, she was a childhood cancer survivor. She was treated at St. Jude. She wanted to grow up, make a difference, and help others who are going through similar circumstances. And yeah, she became a healthcare worker and she works at St. Jude today. So it's a really awesome story. I have, whether it was St. Jude Children's Research Hospital or other causes that serve a similar purpose. I've tried to support over, my 20 plus year, business career, both from my company perspective and individually. And it's just because I know that, I've been very lucky in life. You really don't get to a position that I'm fortunate enough to be in without the ball bouncing your way a couple times. And these families were dealt just horrible hands in life. Really, I mean, they're going through what no one should ever have to go through. It's like immense heartache. And the sad part, the especially sad part is many of those kids will not grow up to have any of the experiences that I've been lucky enough to have in life. And we just got to do something about that. So anytime I've tried to go on these interesting adventures or life challenges, I wanted to make sure that we would be able to accomplish a lot more than what the mission in itself is setting out to do. And that's why the record flights or the air shows all involve similar charitable organizations. And it's why Inspiration4 is undertaking this big fundraising effort for St. Jude.
And you've donated $100 million of your own money for that. You're hoping to raise $200 million, all right, from this mission. Does the effort for fundraising stop after the initial contest goes? How will that continue, I guess, throughout the year?
No, there's a lot of phases, right? This is just phase one. We have a number of interesting ways we want to get the public involved. First, just on following Inspiration4 and the progress we're making through training as we get closer to launch. But there's going to be a number of interesting experiences. I'm sure there'll be more MiG-29 flight experiences and L-39s that we'll auction off with St. Jude. There's going to be some interesting fundraising efforts we're going to do with schools, where we can hopefully get some of their science teachers, maybe even bring up some payload for them. So I think we're going to keep this rolling all the way through the end of the year and ideally beyond. This is a great cause. We should try and exceed our fundraising goals.
So you mentioned some payloads there. It sounds like you're planning to do some science as well on this flight beyond just just the experience of it. What is that still in the planning phase, or do you have experiments that you already know you want to perform, or that you're hoping that your team member, your crew members might bring up?
It actually is still very much in the planning phase because there's a lot of interest. This is why we got to keep making progress and making space more accessible and affordable, because there is just a long wait list for payloads and experiments to get up into orbit because it is expensive. So we've reached out to St. Jude, we've reached out to a number of healthcare organizations, we've reached out to NASA, and the list we're getting is quite lengthy. So we got to go through it and figure out which ones we're going to be able to get up. But it's right back to, the original mission objectives of Inspiration4. You want to do as much good along the way. You want to help solve some of Earth's problems while you're making progress up there. And we think about science and payload as just another good example of that.
You mentioned just kind of the sheer coolness factor of what flying in space can be like. And pretty soon you're going to have your own really sleek SpaceX spacesuit. You're going to climb aboard a spaceship that's actually already had a space flight under its belt, the Resilience, the capsule that launched the Crew 1 mission for NASA by SpaceX. I'm just curious how you're hoping to share that experience. I mean, even your mission patch alone, and forgive me if I'm inferring here, but that 4 with the circle around it really reminds me of the Fantastic Four, another crew of a 4-person crew of famous astronauts who went up into space and then came back with superpowers. Now, I don't expect that's going to happen, but with you and your crew, but it just seems like there's a lot of cool kind of associated with traveling in space and having this kind of a flight versus maybe something that we've seen on Soyuz vehicles, on space shuttle vehicles that are run by NASA and Russia.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much that's special and unique about this. I mean, geez, there's going to be a Super Bowl commercial. That definitely hasn't happened with a space mission before. I think it all comes back to the name of Inspiration4. What we're trying to do is really inspire everybody as to what's possible up in space and certainly down here on Earth. And we're trying to get that message out in the loudest way we possibly can, because I think the world needs it right now, for starters. And I want there to be an awful lot of other kindergartners who grow up and want to go and become astronauts, except I'd like them to have a really good chance of on it being able to happen, which means we got to get Inspiration4 right. But, from now right up until launch and beyond, we're going to be sure to carry the message in the biggest way we can and hopefully energize the country as to, what the mission's about and get them interested and motivated and maybe even inspired.
Is there one thing that you're keeping with you from just your flights in military aircraft, in air show vehicles, that is really that you think is gonna be like a great advantage or a skill that you've learned that you can apply to this mission, to leading a crew that you're putting together, or even just from leading Shift 4 and a business that really lends itself to this flight?
Well, I think the answer is really all of the above. There is a ton I've certainly learned over my aviation career, my experiences at Draken International and Defense Aerospace, and then even running Shift 4 as a company that has nearly 1,600 employees. I think things that I bring to the Inspiration4 mission. I certainly have a pretty extensive aviation background, 6,000 jet hours, numerous ex-military aircraft, and flown in a lot of stressful situations. You fly in air shows, you're 18 inches of wing overlap, 3 feet of wing overlap, 18 inches of vertical separation. You're coming right off the ground, and you're doing it in a lot of different circumstances. I've certainly had my fair share of abnormal procedures that I've had to run through and emergencies and such. And I think that's all, going to be beneficial because, while there will be, new things that I'm sure that I'll see and experience up in space, being under, stressful situations won't be abnormal for me. And that, whether, again, that comes from like my everyday work responsibilities leading a pretty big company or my aviation background. Yeah.
I guess the one question on the experience I should also ask then is, I'm just wondering how standard or special some of the everyday things of living in space are going to be. I mean, do you pick the menu, or is the crew going to pick a menu? Is it going to be regular off the shelf NASA space food, or is it something special? Should we be looking for surprises? And I'm curious because it's the tail end of the year is a Target. You've got some holiday stuff coming up there too. Is it possible you might have a holiday in space?
Is it possible we might have a holiday in space? Well, I'd say this, SpaceX tends to outperform and exceed expectations. I think there is a better chance that we're early than we are delayed. So I actually don't think we're going to be in the holiday season for the mission. In terms of the food, we've had some initial conversations. I said, why don't we just delay this a little bit until we know the rest of our crew members? I don't want to pick out a meal of pizza or something and then find out that half the crew doesn't find it interesting. We got to make these team decisions.
That's great. I should ask. I know it came up in the call earlier, but astronauts who went to the space station, or private space flight participants is what they were called, paid tens of millions of dollars. Is there a cost for this flight? You've got 4 seats on it that you can share, or are you keeping that one private there?
Yeah, it is very much a private transaction between myself, individually and in SpaceX. But what I have shared though is the fundraising goal that we are doing for St. Jude, the contributions I've already made to it of $100 million is going to vastly exceed the cost of the mission itself. And I think that's what matters most. The idea that, does it cost a lot to send a rocket into space? I don't think that's a secret. Elon was very, very open about it. They're all things that are new, are going to be expensive until they get into kind of high rate production. But you need somebody to be willing to pay that high price at first in order to get it to that, that production rate. And that's like what this is going to do. Like, we're going to get this we're going to get this down. And then there'll be, that Falcon 9 that we're going to launch into space on will come back to Earth. That Dragon will come back to Earth. And then somebody else is going to be able to go up on it, except it'll be that much lower cost. Whether you look at cell phones or computers, a lot of these, new age technology is not the most inexpensive thing when they first come out of the gate, but it doesn't take long before it becomes accessible to everyone. And I think that'll be the same story when it comes to commercial spaceflight.
Well, I should maybe wrap up. I know that we're kind of running short on time there, but I'm curious, when you've had a lot of kind of high pressure experiences with flying many kinds of aircraft, but what do you tell your family about the risks of buying a seat to space? Actually, I'm just wondering what those reactions might be like versus in the past when you decided to pick up pick up flying for the first time, that sort of thing.
So no one in my family was surprised at all. Just knowing who I am and kind of what's in my DNA and, the challenges I try and pursue in life. And, when I, make a decision like this, they know that there's a lot of thought that goes into it. And I've shared my feelings on Falcon 9 and Dragon and this great technological marvel that Elon and the SpaceX team have created. And I know that this is the safest spacecraft system that's human rated and operational in the world, hands down. And then I just compare it to some of the other things that I've done in life, whether it's being in Antarctica or flying in air shows, and they're both on an order of magnitude, higher risk than what I think this orbital spaceflight would be. I know that, at first glance, people are like, no, that can't be the case. I really believe that's accurate.
Well, those are all the questions, Jared, that I had hoped to ask. I mean, is there anything about the mission that we haven't discussed that kind of really resonates with you that you want our readers to know about?
Well, look, I just can't, reinforce the point and foot stomp it enough that, especially for your audience, like this is your chance. Like this is a real opportunity here. I mean, you've got 2 seats right now that are up for grabs on the Inspiration4.com mission website. And it's not going to, it's not an auction. It's not some rich person who's going to bid 50 million or 60 million for the seat. Like this is a level playing field right now. So, whether you were thinking about making a donation to just an awesome cause in its own right to St. Jude, go on the mission website, give it a shot. And if you were ever hesitating on, starting an e-commerce business, this might be one of the best opportunities to elevate your business to the stars. And it doesn't cost anything to get involved in that either. So you got 2 chances. You can enter both. 30 days from now, maybe it's one of your readers that has a chance to go to space. That'd be pretty cool. That would be really cool. Thank you so much, Jared Isaacman, founder of Shift4 Payments. Ticket to space in hand on a SpaceX Crew Dragon with his Inspiration4 mission. I really appreciate the time today, and safe flights and safe landings. Yep, thank you very much. Take care. Appreciate it.